making introductions, helping with product market fit, helping raise money, helping them hire. And the vision was to try and cram 2 years of commercial growth into 13 weeks, really mentorship driven. Sure, there's some content and some workshops and things just to baseline everybody and elevate everybody's game. But really it was like biz dev on steroids. And it worked really well. We've had several billion-dollar companies come out of the first couple cohorts. And then we started expanding and doing that in other cities. So we now run programs in Boulder, Boston, Austin, Seattle, New York, Chicago, London, Berlin, Atlanta, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Toronto, Paris, Montreal, Bangalore, Seoul, and Tel Aviv. And we've probably got a few more up our sleeves that we haven't announced yet. Then corporations started coming to us wanting to get involved. We started building out vertical programs in sectors that we were really excited about, co-investing with these corporations, building mentor pools focused on that industry. Usually our corporations would help us select companies based on the companies they most wanted to work with. So I mentioned I built our program with Cedars-Sinai. Usually by the end of each of those cohorts, there were like 8 or 9 deals announced in each program. We now run programs with close to 80 corporate partners in just about every sector you can imagine. We have about 10,000 mentors across the network that are active at the moment. We have invested in 2,500 companies since inception. They're worth about $38 billion. I think we have about 16 or 17 unicorns right now in the portfolio. We have one IPOing actually right now, a company called DigitalOcean. I'm on the hunt now for 10 really great companies to push through our summer program. I say push, but really it's embrace in our summer program. But it is a journey where, you know, and I think you'll hear from the Kona team a little bit about what their experience was like. But it works really well. We have an 88% success rate just in terms of the percentage of our companies that are still active and growing or acquired. Typically, companies are coming in with at least 2 full-time team members, usually between 2 and 10 full-time team members. So there's a bit of a variety in scale when they're on their way in. Usually companies are coming in, they've raised about $2 million or less, and usually at a $10 million valuation or less. The Techstars LA program is not focused on any one vertical. We really do want to invest in companies that are great regardless of their sector. Obviously, I have a particular background in healthcare and will continue to invest in healthcare companies, also deep tech, but we really like e-commerce, real estate tech, cybersecurity, education technology, consumer tech, entertainment tech. I mean, LA is such a multi-industry city that, you know, we think that this is going to be probably one of the most incredible cohorts coming up, and I'm really excited to see some of you or all of you apply. So that's sort of my spiel. Applications are open now, due April 7th. I'll put in the chat window the link to apply unless you guys already all have it. And the program will run from mid-July to mid-October. I don't know if we're going to be doing it on Zoom or in person or some hybrid. I think there's a possibility if vaccinations roll out that we will be able to do something in person by mid-July. So I'll pause there because that was a lot of data.
That was super awesome. I always enjoy hearing the Techstars story. I kind of span both worlds a little bit. So I'm a lead mentor for a couple of Techstars Anywhere companies, which is really fun. And then we've got Startup Boost. And I would love to explain a little bit or have I was asking Blake, but then I realized like literally everyone on the call is named Blake. So maybe I'll saw my message to see if you wanted to do a similar narrative about Startup Boost, just so you get the history of the program and how it fits in the timeline of a startup's journey.
Yeah, so thanks. I hope you guys can hear me fine. But so, you know, Startup Boost and Techstars have been longtime partners, and you know, the reason being is we similarly had, you know, they came in, you know, a long time ago and done an amazing job paving the accelerator model, and all of this has shifted and they've continued to grow. You know, I think we all believe in what we teach in terms of like being able to adapt and find out the best ways to, service our customer and succeed at doing it in a sustainable fashion. We at Startup Boost have, our initial motivation was, how do we help startups that are, in this in-between stage between like a Techstars and, YC, and, I have a company that I've started, Startup Weekend, and when we attack that space, it's a massive growing space, and we found that we could do the most good kind of finding ourselves just before the accelerator. There are many different versions of accelerators. There's, I'm sure that all of you find a tough time locking down what any of these things really mean. And it's because there isn't one form of them. We were one of the original pre-accelerators, and now we've seen different versions of it come out there. So I can't promise you won't hear another definition, but for us, we are really trying to help startups out in a way that is mentor-driven, figure out what's wrong, what you need as a company, and help you get there in the most efficient way possible. So, as a contrast of like, we don't take equity and we don't charge, we're trying to figure out a way that we can play nicely in the ecosystem for everybody and give the startups, help them maintain everything they need in order to get to that stage where an accelerator is ready to make that investment, where a VC is ready to make that investment, or some other pre-seed round, and or you're ready to get your revenue going. And it really, all of that leans around your business model and identifying what direction to head into, and hopefully not making missteps along the way. We too have also taken that global perspective of, we all live in a global ecosystem, and we can support each other and take this knowledge and bring our resources together to really make the most effective impact on the community that we are, and the growth of these startups, which is you. And so we are in 12 cities across US, Europe, and Canada, and Africa, actually. So that means we're in LA, Vancouver, Toronto, Detroit, Pittsburgh, New York, UK, which is actually running as one. We combined London and Newcastle, Dublin, Zambia, and Kenya. I hope I didn't miss one. But and then we just added Washington, DC, and South Florida, so like Miami and Fort Lauderdale. And we have amazing directors in each of the cities who really make this happen. And that here is Tanya and Mark have been running the LA one, and Mark has now stepped over to be a supporter from and really a mentor for the program. And we also have Arvind here as well, who's been a longtime mentor. Really all just here to further the goals of figuring out ways to help you as entrepreneurs get to the next stage. And we like to think we've been very successful at it. We typically have a company that goes into Techstars and or into all these other accelerators in the different regions, including Y Combinator, 500, etc. Let's see, anything else? I think everything else is about programming. Mark and Tanya can jump into that. I think that our biggest thing is that we're here to help. We wish we could do more. We have what we call Founders Boost X, which is a community for entrepreneurs, which is our way of capturing those non-8 or to 10 startups who get into the program, meaning those hundreds of people who don't get into Startup Boost. That's our way of trying to help even more people and more startups succeed and kind of fill that gap. But our program is amazing. So and so is Techstars. So if you have the opportunity to be able to get into any of these, and we know that will be a great support. So hopefully we'll see your applications, and I'm going to pass it off to Tanya and Mark.
Yeah, that sounds great. So we've popped the application links into the chat for both programs. I would love to hear from Mark, who's also Blake, a little bit about his experience and observation about having companies go through Startup Boost and then transition to Techstars. And then I would love to hear from Sid too, who actually lived it and went through both programs back to back, spring into summer. What a cool coup there. So Mark, cool. Take it away.
Yeah, so it's Mark Husser here. I am also Blake or not Blake. Yeah, I feel like I sit on a lot of different sides of this. I've been an entrepreneur. I've used to work for Techstars mostly in China, and it's been really fun working with Startup Boost here in LA for the last year or so. So yeah, I'd love to sort of, get us to the meat of what we're talking about. So I'm going to share a little bit of a story about how Sid somehow snuck into both programs almost simultaneously, as far as I could tell. So the backstory was, and I think this is sort of interesting information when you're trying to find where to go. I think Sid and his team had a really good job of getting their message out. And so like when you're applying to these programs, one sort of advice I could give to you is find a way to kind of start targeting the directors and the mentors of all of these programs. And like Sid, I don't know how he did it, but essentially I think both I recommended him to Techstars and Techstars recommended him to me in some sort of weird, alternative universe of stuff. So I think one of the great lessons I think in this space is that both Techstars, Startup Boost, and a lot of the mentors in our space really live by this vision called give first. And what we mean by that is like our first vision here is to like be about helping founders. And so like I think, Sid's example and Matt and Tanya and Blake and all of us have really been out there, on one side of the fence, being entrepreneurs, understanding how hard it is, not knowing what choices, we should make, and then trying where we can to kind of provide guidance, program, additional connections, et cetera. But yeah, so the backstory is with Sid and Kona, for some reason they ended up in our program and, they ended up in our batch. And I remember Tanya and I looking at this startup and we're thinking to ourselves, it's like, what are these like 19, 20-year-old UCLA guys doing? Like, have they even graduated? Like, where do they fit in this whole thing? But I think the thing that really stood out to me, like hearing Sid and Corinne, and Andrew, was just how much dedication they had to their customer. And I think this is something that regardless of what program, you end up in, spend the time like talking to your customers. And so like, maybe we can kind of pass that off to Sid on that note. Was like, I remember their application stood out and their interview stood out because they came to us and said, we talked to 250 remote managers. And so that sort of core of the story kind of like fed into us helping them, they knew their customers, but we helped sort of help them position the story around their customers. And then when it became time to sort of do their application into Techstars, I remember I got an email from, I think it was Alex, asking like, well, how are these guys doing? And I was like, they're doing awesome. You need them now. And so I think that's sort of the magic of like going into these pre-accelerators is you get to know kind of the messaging and the people that can kind of get you closer to the opportunities that can help you. So I'll sort of leave it to Sid to sort of connect the reality of this story.
That's so funny. Thanks, Mark. Sorry, yeah. Blake. I honestly didn't know half of this information until just now, so this is news to me as well. Hey everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Sid, or I'm Blake, and I'm the co-founder CEO of Kona. We're formerly known as SAIC Insights, officially fully rebranded to Kona now. We're the emotional intelligence platform for remote teams, so we help remote managers become great emotionally intelligent leaders by helping them build the habits that a great leader has. And we help them build those habits in the context of their daily workflow in Slack. And so Slack is the first integration that we built. The vision is just, we're trying to make work happier and more connected for everybody. We did Startup Boost May through June and Techstars July through October. And we were accelerator hopping. So we did another accelerator at UC Berkeley called UC Launch just before that. And we did the demo day for that on May 1st and then started Startup Boost like May 4th or something like that. And then finished Startup Boost. And during Startup Boost, we're going through Techstars interview process. And I remember asking Mark, hey, like, what should we do? Like, blah, blah, blah. And Mark was super helpful. And I didn't know that he had recommended us because you're not supposed to talk about it. And then we got in and we weren't allowed to tell Mark. And we had to keep it under wraps just because like there's like some rules around, I don't know how it works, but so until like a class was announced in July, we couldn't tell Mark. And I was just like, well, shit, Mark's helped us. He should know, but then we found out that Mark knew the whole time. So it's kind of just like this weird, like reverse Mexican standoff. Yeah, that's kind of the story there. But yeah, it's good to meet you all, and happy to be here and answer any questions that I can help talk about.
Hey, Sid. I know it's really funny because none of us know all of the story, but I would love for you to explain why you thought it was so important to go through these programs and sort of what were your objectives to accomplish and going through the motions of all of these programs. Yeah,
totally. So quick context. In the lifetime of my short lifetime of having done startups with different projects and startup type things, I've been through UCLA's undergrad accelerator program. I'm a senior at UCLA, by the way. And so I went through UCLA's undergrad accelerator program, went through UCLA's MBA school accelerator program, then went through UC Launch, then went through Startup Boost, then went through Techstars LA. So 5 programs all in all across like the college ecosystem. UC Launch is Berkeley's accelerator program. I don't know what made us turn up there, but the reason that we kind of accelerator hopped was literally just, I'm 20 years old. Like, what do I know? And so it was mostly just like learning. It can't hurt to go through a program. It's just the worst that can happen is we spend a few hours and meet some cool people that we stay in touch with. That's like the time that you're giving, especially during like a lot of these virtual programs. It was just like a no downside type thing. And most accelerator programs will position themselves like Startup Boost is equity free. UC Launch was equity free. Techstars is like more than worth the equity that they take. And so it's kind of like there was no downside for us, and we didn't know anything about anything. So it was like, well, we'll learn something at the very least. Is how we thought about it, and all the programs that we went through turned out to be like extremely pivotal in us learning something specific. Also, my internet is kind of crapping out, so I don't know if I'm cutting out from time to time, so I apologize. But yeah, it was long story short, it was literally just how can I learn as much as I can learn in a short period of time. Okay, awesome. So it really sped up your learning and you expanded your network. You got lots of great feedback. And I mean, especially if you're a young entrepreneur, it's very interesting to be able to hop all the university programs and the sort of pro level and you were doing it all. So I think that's a good kind of overview to start this off. And I would love to see some questions. So is it possible to do 2 programs at the same time? It's possible to be accepted. Is it, time-wise, is it manageable? I think it just depends on the program. We did UC Launch and Startup Boost as an overlap for like a few days. It was the end of UC Launch and the beginning of Startup Boost. So it's kind of like light on both sides. Our UC Launch, it was just like prepping for demo day, honing the pitch, and just like running the business. Either way, your main focus for most of your time is going to be running the business and like working with customers, whatever stage you're at, learning from customers, building the product. And so it's just a matter of like how time intensive is the program that you're part of, and then how flexible are the people that run the program in terms of letting you do 2 things at once if there's a conflict. But we got lucky in that there was no like overlap or we had to be in 2 places at once ever. I think it also helped that you had a few team members in, because if you needed to be away for one thing, you were able to cover with some team members. So that's nice when you can be in the program with others on your team who can also hear the same feedback and give you multiple perspectives outside of the program. Let's see, life at Techstars.
I guess Matt has an opinion on this. Matt,
yeah.
How would you?
Yeah.
So,
oh, I didn't see you going like,
and we'd have to talk about the other program, and this starts talking a little bit about Ahmad's question as well. the Techstars experience is pretty intense. Like it for the first, it's 13 weeks. We chunk it out into 3 1-month-long sprints. In the first month, there is some level of workshop in the first 2 weeks, but those are full days. Followed by what we call mentor madness, which is typically like back to back meetings, usually 10 or so meetings a day for like 3 weeks. And those meetings then lead to more meetings because each person you're meeting with wants to introduce you to like 3 to 5 people. And so it's just a lot to like follow up on. And I would be surprised if you were able to do that on top of another program that has some kind of intense experience as well. Second month is a lot more flexible for us. And the third month then becomes really intense again. That's when you're working with us like night and day on your VC strategy, on your deck, on your materials, on your pitch. We're making investor introductions left and right. You're having tons of back-to-back VC meetings. And again, you're still working on trying to close contracts. So like, I would imagine that for our program, on top of actually like running your company, it would be very tough to fit in another thing unless it was like a day or so here and there.
I mean, I would say that for Startup Boost, it's generally not a full-time thing. I mean, just so I don't know if we caught this detail. So Startup Boost is one night a week for 6 or 7 weeks. There's an intensity to it, but it's definitely way less than what you'll get inside of Techstars. That said, I think some of the mentor and some of the pushing, it's a taste of what you might get at Techstars. It's definitely not the same thing.
Yeah, the process is a little bit different, and it's meant to prepare you for being successful at pitching to a program like Techstars versus replacing all of the content and the experience of Techstars. And you will have some overlap between mentors who span both programs. Harpreet, do you want to ask your question?
Oh, yes, sure. So I want to ask you, like, can we apply for a startup boost when you are still developing a product, like you're working on it right now? So,
okay. No, there are no restrictions on who can apply. You can apply, no problem. Whether or not you'll have a good chance of success is, I guess, maybe more to the point. And so I would say that we are looking for generally an MVP, so a minimum viable product, something that has something that we can touch and feel while we are evaluating the application. Generally, we are also looking for some evidence of market validation or like a cool entrepreneurial history of the founders. A market validation could be in the form of perhaps you have some early customers. In the case of Kona and Sid's company, he had interviewed several hundred potential customers, and they had quite a good point of view about what they needed. We generally want to work with cool people, fun people to work with. So we do want to see your personality and maybe some interesting backstory in the application, so we really get a sense of who you are, on top of your connection to the product, your domain expertise, right? Is there a good fit between the founder's experience and the product they're trying to build, or are they completely in a different industry? So yes, almost every team is still building some element of their product. They continue to iterate, they continue to add features or refine their product, but generally there's a core demonstratable idea already in production.
I'll add one quick thing. I mean, the one advantage of any of these programs is knowing when your timing fits these demo days, because you're going to get a tons of inbounds around these sort of things. So like we had a startup that kind of like, they decided to push back their launch a little bit farther. It didn't meet demo day, but I would say like in general, it would be great to kind of meet your goals for your company, as well as sort of using the boost you get from any of these things. So like, I feel like the more product you can show, the better, but it's not a make or break for Startup Boost. We had several like med tech companies that like by no means had got their product launched and were far from launching it, but there was a lot of value that was gotten from the product, from the program pre-product.
And the stage of company for us, every company is going to have sort of a different set of criteria at which you would judge its readiness for a Techstars program. I'll give you one classic example. I met a team, 2 seniors at Vanderbilt, who were trying to build a nuclear-powered airplane, which is insane. And I kept tracking them, and right as they were graduating, I checked back in with them, and they said, we've pivoted. Now we're just doing a nuclear power energy pack. So we're going to take strontium-90, which is a radioisotope waste product, and we're going to package it. We figured out, a design that's going to work to package it and create a scalable, stable electric power source that can last for decades. It can be used in space. It can be used in undersea. It can be used in remote Earth. And at first I thought they were nuts, but as I started digging into them and bringing subject matter experts, like they passed every sniff test. JPL was on board. They said, like, this is a thing, this is going to work. And we brought them in, and then they won $1.5 million US Air Force grant. We raised $1.5 million pretty quickly for them. They've got now tens of millions of dollars in contracts. They're working with the Oak Ridge National Lab at the Department of Energy. They got a $5 million congressional budget allocation to continue developing their product. It's going to be probably 4 years until they actually have a functioning thing that they can sell. But we've been able to just change the trajectory of that company. But they came in with a strong team, 3 full-time amazing people, a professor and faculty advisors that really knew what they were talking about, and it's working great. So you kind of have to, and at the same time, we might put money into a company where it's just a founder. We usually like to see at least 2 full-time people at the company, but we can go pretty early too.
Tanya, I'm gonna jump in if you don't mind. Harpreet, there's something that Tanya said in her reply to you that really stuck out to me. We're looking for really cool people. So take 1 second, forget about where your product is. And when you're looking at that, the essence of your question was, what qualities lend towards a successful application, right? The number 1 quality that's really going to matter is you and your team standing out. And this also answers Craig's question, right? How can Startup Boost be able to not charge? What we're looking for, since we're all startup people, we just want to meet great people. We want to be around really cool people. And we've been through this journey. There's really no catch to it. The deal is we want to work with interesting companies and be around cool people, right? It's really that simple. It sounds naive, but that's the crux of the entire operation here. We feed off of each other's energy. We go as fast as you want to go. We go as slow as you need to go, right? But that's basically it. So uncool, you are cool. Yeah. We want to help, and that really goes into your DNA as an entrepreneur. We've been there. When I started entrepreneuring, there was no Startup Boost. I had to build up my own network, and it took me years to just pick up the lingo and know the right people. And you could do that in literally 6 weeks with Startup Boost, right? You understand that jargon. You understand what TAM, SAM, SOL means and why that's so important. You develop, even if you go in without knowing how to use PowerPoint and Excel, and there's plenty of entrepreneurs who don't. That's totally okay. After 6 weeks, you'll figure out formulas. You'll be able to build a basic revenue model. And if you don't, if you're intimidated, all you have to do is ask, right? There's mentors and people around you who will literally go out of their way to make sure you know it. And it's very judgment free. It's a fantastic environment, right? Our job is to really make sure that you are as successful as possible after 6 weeks. It's not a lot, but you get on that playing field so that when you enter that world of Techstars and other incubators and accelerators, you're pretty much standardized. You're a standardized entrepreneur. You know how to talk the talk. You have those basic competencies that these programs are looking for, and you're ready to literally get boosted away. It's in our name.
Thank you, Arvind. So the little question, but my question was like, because most of us join this program because we don't have much of the entrepreneurial skills. We have the idea, we want to do something in our lives, and we want to pursue as an entrepreneur journey. But all we like is the skills, all we like is the network and some mentorship from the already established people to move forward. So that's why we started applying to this program, so that to get into something, to begin with something, and then from there on we can go on our own. So that's why I would like to know the criteria of, okay, you guys go by the ideas in the application, or you go by the entrepreneurial charisma of a person. Okay, he's fun to go and he has those skills. Okay. And those kind of things. So
I'm sensing in the written questions and in what you're saying that there's a lot of uncertainty, right? About whether or not you meet all of the criteria, and especially because we put this like cool kid label on this, it may be causing
Not
even
cool.
more insecurity.
We're not
right?
cool.
So it's not cool. None of us are super cool. We all are kind of nerds, and we all like being with other nerds, and these are our people, and that's why we continue to participate in lots of startup programs. And so I would encourage you, some of you are worried about maybe we don't have the co-founder, maybe we don't, we've built a no-code MVP. That's actually really cool. We just want you to take action. We are looking for action takers who are showing the fundamental steps towards building a business that is going to have some kind of transformative effect, and that we can see that there may be a very good business model at the end of your story, right? So we want to find those things that we can hand off to the next program or to investors that actually could turn into some really amazing businesses. There's nothing that says that you have to know all of the answers right away when you apply. Actually going through the application process for one or both or many programs is very helpful, so that you start to understand what these programs and then investors will ask of you down the road. If you go through the questions and you say, well, I don't have an answer to that, well, that's a gap that you can then research, watch a video. We have some instructions alongside our application, and you can find out what they're actually asking. What do they mean by that question? I don't know what a tam sam som is. I need to figure that out, right? So you're just going to find more and more signposts by going through this exercise that's something a gap I need to fill. That's a person I probably need to identify to join my team. I would say that there is an interesting dynamic. Sometimes teams are formed right before Startup Boost, and they go through the program together and they decide, yeah, we are not a fit. This is not a cool thing. We can't do this. I will guarantee that that is a better outcome than you can imagine in the scope of your life, because knowing when to kill an idea or a relationship or a business before you waste all your time and money on it is actually very, very sound and interesting, good information to have. However, sometimes those teams split up and they form other companies, or one continues down the road with one company and the other forms another. They benefited from the program because they learned how to be entrepreneurs. They learned what they liked and didn't like about the product they were working with, the people they were working with. And because they built that network, they became more successful when they tried to go into the next phase of their career. So I would say, don't worry about what you don't have yet. Try to fill those gaps, try to identify them and fill them. But, go through the process. If you got on this call, that meant you're interested. And whatever you're building is probably worth considering. So we would like to see your application. I would encourage you all to click that link and at least get your application started and see what the questions are. And, take a chance on yourself. It'll take an hour, I hope, to go through that. Maybe add a special video. That would be nice. We'd like to see who you are and how you operate and how you talk. But don't feel like you have to be perfect right away. Startup life is messy and inconsistent and bumpy, and we all know that. And so we're willing to overlook a lot to see what could happen a few years in the future.
I wanted to know, Sid, at what point of your company, where was it in terms of launch, or was it pre-launch or conceptual when you were accepted to your first accelerator program? And did your trajectory change depending on which accelerator you were in? Did it define your company in a very different way depending on which accelerator that you were in?
Yes. it's yes to the second thing, and I'll come to that. On the first point, where we were when we first got in. So our first accelerator we did in the current, what could conceivably be considered to be this company. It was UC Launch, which is UC Berkeley's undergrad / grad school accelerator program. It's their like early stage thing. And we were accepted to that program just before we did our first like MVP launch. We had done like a ton of customer discovery. So we did like 150 customer discovery interviews before we wrote a single line of code, or like 100 or something like that, like a decent amount before we wrote any code. And so we had a good idea of at least the problem, and we had some hypothesis around what the solution was going to be. We had mock-ups, we were working on a solution. We didn't have customers when we first got into the first accelerator, but that program was really defining in the sense that they made us do a further 100 or 150 customer discovery interviews, and just like trained us in how to do them well. Like our first 100 were just like us talking and asking some questions. But in the second 100 or 150, we started being a lot more intentional about like, these are the hypotheses that we have. This is specifically what we're trying to invalidate. And so it was like, okay, this is what we think is true, and now let's try to poke holes in it. And we actively tried to disprove our own beliefs. And when we couldn't anymore, beyond a conceivable like doubt, we knew there was something there and something in the problem space. And so we were very like problem focused, and we wouldn't have been if UC launched that program hadn't focused on that so much. So that was just lucky that we were able to be part of the university ecosystem and just be like, learn from like some people that like just teach entrepreneurship, and they just taught us the right things. So around that helped us, like that was like from February 2020 to like May, or like early May. And so that helped us define like the customer understanding and like get our first customers as well, all that kind of stuff. And then we did we did Startup Boost, which was super helpful in like nailing down like a story and presenting and pitching. And I had been doing pitches, but I had no idea of like how to pitch actually like well. And Startup Boost really helped with like, I think it's first started with like, just do a 1-minute pitch, then make it a 90-second pitch, then 2-minute pitch or something like that. So it's like, just by putting in the reps and being forced to pitch made me a lot clearer at like now I can, if you give me 15 seconds to tell you what we do, I can do it. And part of that muscle was built at Startup Boost. And it's really important to be able to do that, because if you're convincing anybody to join the team or an investor, whatever, you need to be able to like nail that. And so Startup Boost was really pivotal in that. And then Techstars was life-changing in terms of like just being able to, like, week 1 of the program was college. Like we learned how to run a business from scratch, in terms of understanding W3, which is your who, what, and why, then understanding what are the key metrics, KPIs, then understanding like what are the assumptions that you're making, what are the ones that are valid, what are the ones that are invalid, how do you validate those, then understanding how to set like a cadence for like what are the metrics that really matter, how do you track those, how do you set goals and objectives and key results to track like your progress towards that, how do you know whether you're making progress, not motion, and you're not just doing things for the sake of doing things, how do you know what you're doing is important. That all things we learned in the first week, and we just have a ton of notes from then that we kept referring to and still refer to. Then we had Mentor Madness, which was again really helpful in pitching and like stages basically that were super like defining. In fact, fun fact, our product is the core feature of our product now is very different from what it was when we went through Startup Boost. It's now just a really simple daily emotional check-in. And the red, yellow, green check-in that we do in our product is just straight ripped off of something that we did in Techstars. So we just took a process and productized it, and it caught on like wildfire. And now like that's our product. And so like that was pivotal for sure.
I would add that we actually see that sometimes the business does change very dramatically, even 5-6 months after they've gone through Startup Boost, right? It's think of it like a lump of coal in a tumbler, and it's like shaking around with all this mentor feedback and all of this market feedback and customer interviews and things like that. You're pitching at demo day, you're getting introductions to investors, and you just keep refining it. And startup life is going to be like that. You are never going to be done kind of polishing your diamond. It's always going to be something else to do to make it prettier, to make it more profitable, to make it operate more smoothly. And so it's kind of interesting to see where people go. Confidentially, we have a participant from our last spring program who is considering an acquisition offer. We've got people, I mean, just like, and the thing that you're doing and joining these programs is that you're getting access to people who can help you sift through the options there, right? Who can actually help you look at a term sheet and say, is this actually something I should do, or should I walk away? We've had to, have those kinds of difficult discussions. But if you don't know the answers to those questions already, and you don't know who you would call, if you did get this opportunity of a lifetime, you might make decisions that are not well informed because you didn't get a chance to reach out to 4 or 5 of your mentors and see if this is a good decision for you, right? Or how to negotiate it. So I think those are some of the hidden things that are involved with a program like this. It's not sort of on our website, but that's the type of opportunity that you're getting when you decide to go through something like this. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, maybe we can toss this last question to Matt. So I think we didn't get a direct answer to what are you looking for when you select startups, but we also have kind of a follow-up question is, does your startup idea have to be a high return project, or can you be a high impact idea, even if it is purposely low revenue?
Yeah, so just going back to the first point, sorry, I missed it if somebody asked me this question, but when we're evaluating companies similar to Startup Boost, it is all about the team. We are looking for passionate, humble, coachable, ambitious people who are obsessed with the problem they're solving. And we're looking for people who have demonstrated an ability to execute. So, we're generally not investing in, PowerPoint idea stage companies. We are looking for the most part, companies that have built something that is showing signs of working. It can be pre-revenue. In terms of the Craig's question, we've had a lot of companies that have come in with one idea and pivot to another. We've had companies that have come in with just 2 or 3 fantastic people that we know are going to build something because there's just that spark in them. We see it, and they have the technical skill set to do it. And we want to be in business with them. And maybe the first half of the program is spent taking a world of different ideas and funneling it down to the thing that they're actually going to build. In the healthcare program, we've done that a few times. We had a company called Deep6 AI that came in with a really strong group of machine learning engineers. They didn't know what they wanted to build, and they ultimately figured out what they're going to do. And by the end of program, fast forward to today, they've now raised over $20 million. They're one of the hottest companies in the healthcare artificial intelligence space. Similarly, we had another company called Health Tensor that came in, 3 people, just really smart people, and we thought they would figure something out, and they have now raised about $6.5 million. They're not quite as far along as Deep6, but if we're passionate about the team, we'll take the flyer. In terms of impact versus high return, what we didn't talk about is our business model at Techstars. So we do invest capital into companies. We do have LPs, and our job is to help that capital turn into a meaningful financial return. That said, we are a B Corp. We care deeply about the impact our companies are going to have on this planet and our societies and our communities. And so, I personally am trying to pick companies that are going to have an impact while also making a profit. I'm very passionate about healthcare. I'm passionate about climate change, energy, accessibility of housing, education, technology. So I'm in any given 2 investments, going to pick the one that's going to have a positive impact. But we are not a nonprofit. And we're not interested in funding nonprofits. They do have to make money.
I would say that that's a similar answer for Startup Boost. We do very much care about the impact these companies are making, that they're solving big challenges that our world faces. But we are also looking for, generally speaking, for-profit companies. Sometimes they have a different, slightly different model. I can think of a company that was more of a community impact model, but they did aim to make a profit. And so we had a lot of debate about that one, but felt like it was a good company to encourage in the world. And so we accepted them, but it was kind of an outlier. So I would say that there are a lot of programs in LA that you could turn to get help in that area. And one that I've been involved with, highly recommend you look at Social Venture Partners Los Angeles, because they specialize in similar programming for nonprofits, if that's the route that you'd like to take.
I'll give one more sort of tip. So I think there's a lot of things you probably heard today, but the one thing that's, having been on selection committees with Techstars, other accelerators, Startup Boost, the one sort of secret thing you need to remember is if you're not coachable, you're not going to make the cut. And this is something that we never really talk about, but you could have the most greatest startup ever, all the stuff. But if you act like someone who's not going to take feedback well, is not going to be coachable, oftentimes you won't make the cut. I mean, having been forced in other programs to take someone who seems like a great startup, great founder, but not coachable, I can personally say it's best not to take someone who's not coachable. So like, making sure I think another way to put it is make sure you display something like a growth mindset, a learning mindset, be open to feedback, because this is really make or break at the end of the day. If you're not a team or a founder that's going to be working well with, whatever program you're in, you won't get accepted.
I think it's, how does that play out in the rest of the program? You're going to get feedback from 2, 3, 10, 12, 15 mentors a day. I'm thinking about both Startup Boost and Mentor Madness, which is like an insane tornado of feedback. Not everybody's going to agree with you and how you're running your company. They're going to give you feedback, and you're going to have this very challenging job to take all of those bits of information and synthesize it down to figure out what your immediate best next step is. If you are taking a lot of, of these comments personally, it's going to not be effective for you to be in a program like that. So that is just a kind of a heads up of like how that experience of being coachable will, kind of draw out.
I'll jump in. I mean, you guys kind of already answered it, but it was just around, I feel like I've accomplished quite a bit. I'm on my 3rd prototype of a hardware product and have a prototype of an app, which is a little bit crazy. But I haven't found a technical co-founder yet. I'm starting to search for one, and I'm hoping that I can get one soon, because it's a lot of work. I'd really love to be able to delegate and focus and on like my skill set instead of trying to learn a whole new one. And I feel like there would be a ton of value in either of the programs. So if there's any further comments on just whether or not, if we can show some real progress and some traction, like does not having a co-founder at this point, is that going to really dock us?
I second Amy's statement on that one.
I can speak to that from Techstars, which is that it's tough to get the full value out of Techstars if you can't divide and conquer. And if your product development can't be moving forward because you're in meetings all day and you can't then execute on customer opportunities as a result, it's just tougher. You're going to fall behind where the other companies are. It's not a deal killer. And for some companies, you don't need a lot of technical co-founders. There are a lot of e-commerce companies where you can really focus on marketing, sales, supply chain, and use a Shopify backend. And so I don't think every company necessarily requires a technical backend, and some companies don't require, or you can outsource it for some companies. But if you are building a tech company and the core product is technical, it would be very tough to build that company and for us to invest in it if the person who's actually building the technology isn't in the company.
Okay. Yeah, it was for that reason I'm thinking more of the boost first, hoping I can get a co-founder on board, and then we'll see where we can go from there.
I think it's, getting exposure to people who learn about your business and can help you find that right person. That's a good balance, is an opportunity that I do see happening in Boost. But I agree with Matt. It was very well said that you're going to get more out of this if you can bring someone that you suspect could be a good partner with you, because like I said, you're going to hear a lot of feedback and you're going to have to process it pretty rapidly and take action in different directions, even in our program, which is more part-time. So I would just encourage you to start looking for people who can support what you're doing. Part of what downstream investors are looking for is, can you recruit a team, right? Are people excited by your idea? Is this something that is going to be infectious and you're going to be able to scale by growing with human capital as well as dollars?
If you don't have access to a college accelerator, which seems to be a pretty good place to start, is there anywhere else to do a pre-accelerator so one can start to get your pieces in place? And if so, does LA need more pre-accelerators to help entrepreneurs get their ideas shaped?
Wow, okay, so when I started down the founder path, there were way less resources available to founders than there are right now. So I would encourage you to take advantage of so many education pieces to help you understand what you need to do to be in a position to apply to that next program or to advance your company. I could call out, toolkit.techstars.com is a good resource. There's so many from legal resources. Many of the accelerators have a good amount of content out there. And we have Founders Boost X, which I'm hoping that the real Blake Caldwell will pop into the chat for everybody to get, or we'll email you as a follow-up. So there are a lot of resources that you can look to really help you figure out what you're supposed to be doing, if that's part of the question. I think there's also resources like your SBDCs and your score to help you with like the basics of your business plan. There's tons of, I see my friend Jacques here, there's tons of resources out there that are willing to help you figure out how to build no code MVPs. There's lots of stuff out there to look for. If we knew more about your situation, feel free to follow up with us or email me and let me know more about the situation. I can help guide you towards something more specific than that. But I would definitely, when in doubt, Google it out because there's a lot out there right now.
Both these programs go through, are in some ways related to the GAN network, and they both use this tool called F6S. So F6S.com. And that might be a resource where you can find a bunch of different programs that are out there. I think F6S is probably one of the biggest aggregators of different programs, and the sort of benefit of by applying to different programs, you can kind of see the typical questions.
And you'll find lots of programs to apply to, hopefully even in your area if you are not near one of our programs. There was a question about whether or not you should apply to our particular program if maybe you're not in LA. And I would say that we generally do prefer to find teams that have some grounding in LA. At least one of the founders is connected in LA because we are trying to build an ecosystem that's supportive of entrepreneurs in this area. And so the chance that maybe at some point we could all be together in person again, we can have events, we can help each other out, we can meet investors in our community, we can, put you in touch with people and accelerators in our community. That's really part of our mandate. The person who asked about this, I think, was located in Canada, and we do have 2 chapters in Canada, Toronto and Vancouver. So I would encourage you to kind of look at all of the global programs and apply to the one that's nearest to your home because you'll get the most out of it in the long run for being connected into your city.
Cool. So first of all, thanks for putting this on. Sorry, I'm watching my kid cooking and trying to listen to this at the same time. I just want to thank you guys for obviously, this whole thing. It's really new to me. I'm in a grad program right now and kind of came up with a startup idea. I've been moving pretty fast on it. And I was just trying to make sure the Boost LA one is kind of like lower intensity than the Techstar program because I thought I was only aware of the Boost one, and then I came to this, and I'm just trying to get clarity.
Would consider it like a feeder program into Techstars. It's like a prep school for Techstars, I would say. Let's say that could be one of the outcomes. Some of our alumni actually go to other accelerators as well, which we also love, but Techstars has been a long-term partner of ours, and so we tend to get a lot of our companies applying to Techstars programs, and we get in touch with the Techstars teams who are evaluating programs, and they generally ask us for feedback. So we have that nice give and take between our two programs.
Thank you. Maybe we can end with like 1 or 2 sentences of like advice for people that are sort of in this situation, figuring out what they want to do. Maybe you can go first there, Matt, and sort of give, I don't know, a few gems of wisdom to sort of rock us out.
Well, the first is, if you're interested in Techstars, apply. You can't get in if you don't apply. It's one sure way not to get in. If you're looking for feedback on your company, feel free to email me. I'm happy to chat. You know, a question that a lot of people ask me is that I'm a solo founder now, but I have somebody who, you know, would join if we got into Techstars, or might be able to join by the summer. That's okay. You know, that works well for me. But you know, the key question you guys have to ask yourself right now, if you're, you know, considering these programs, is are you ready to go full time on this company and give it everything you've got? You know, are you still wavering? Are you working on another side project? Are you still in university or grad school program? Because really running a startup is an incredible amount of work. And you know, I think if you're ready to do it, then you know, a program like this can help you do it with structure and give you a true unfair competitive edge in the market. So I definitely recommend applying. Often companies will apply for us. They're too early this year, but you know, we get you in their system and maybe you're ready for us next year. I'd say in any given class, you know, at least half of them are prior applicants to either our program or another Techstars program. And you don't have to be in LA to apply for our program.
Yeah, and I would say that oftentimes if you're in that situation Matt described, you know, Matt or his predecessors would say, hey, we think you should take a look at this. It's a little early for us, but we like it. And so we do look at those recommendations quite strongly. So it doesn't hurt you to apply to one or both programs. Just depends on lots of evaluators kind of doing the deep dig and trying to figure out what's best for your company. Let's see, lines, not dots. What do you want to say?
That's a reference to Mark Schuster's investment philosophy, which we share.
So I mean, I think the idea I was just saying is, don't come in like with, we want to know the trajectory of your story. And I think if Sid could be any better example of like how many people he touched and showed that like from week 1 to us to week 8 with us, that trajectory. And I think like that's so important. Don't come to us at the end of your journey, come to us in the middle or during or whatever. That's how we help. That's how we follow your progress and your momentum and stuff like that.
I'll give an example. I was part of Mentor Madness for one of the Techstars Anywhere cohorts, one that was like right at the start of COVID, and nobody knew that Anywhere was going to be such a big deal, right? When that cohort was recruited. And I remember talking to a woman who used to be a designer, like a digital expert, and she ended up getting a farm, owning a farm. And she thought, why am I here? This is crazy. I don't know what I'm doing. She was like, kind of at a certain level of confidence going into the program, because she felt like maybe I don't fit, like farms and Techstars is so weird, right? By the end of the program, she was pitching, what, 12, 13 weeks later, that she had grown her revenue by 13x in that time, or 11x in the 13 weeks. It was like insanity. So she learned all about how to report her numbers, how to impress investors, with how to actually structure the operations of her company in order to be able to make those audacious claims. So what's possible with your company at the beginning of a program completely changes because you get all of this extra input and structure and access to resources. She's raised multiple rounds, I think now, actually. So it's really interesting to see how fast your future can change by going down this path.